10 o'clock. Welcome to the Government Review Committee for Tuesday, September 1st, 2026. I'll start with reading the acknowledgement. We begin this gathering by acknowledging and celebrating these traditional lands as a gathering place of the first peoples and their ancestors who are entrusted to care for Mother Earth since time immemorial. We do so respecting both the land and the indigenous people who continue to walk with us through this world. Today, the county is committed to working with the indigenous peoples and all residents to pursue a united path of reconciliation. Okay, the adoption of the agenda, please. Moved by Judy.
I'm just going to read the motion there for you. So that the agenda for September 1st, 2026 meeting of the Governance Review Committee be adopted.
Passed. Second by Jared. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Seeing none. Adoption of the minutes.
That the minutes of the Governance Review Committee held March 3rd, 2026 be adopted.
Any second? Yeah, first and second. Thanks. Is there any discussion regarding the minutes? None. Okay, reports to the Governance Review. Oh. Go.
Sorry, there's one small discussion at 5.1. My name is Greenwood-Spears. It just has Greenwood.
Thank you very much. We need. Yeah. Okay, number 5, reports to the Governance Review Committee. 5.1.
Resolved that the Governance Review Committee accept the changes made to the procurement policy and further that the draft procurement policy be placed on the Governance Review Committee consultation project on Engage Frontenac for 21 days for public comment, and further that should no public comments be received, that the County Council approve the new procurement policy attached to this report as Appendix A, and further that bylaw 2013-0011 be a bylaw to adopt the procurement policy to be repealed.
Is there any discussion? Go ahead, Judy.
Sorry, yes, I know that, we're trying to bring our procurement policy in line with the new government proposals, but there's a couple things that caught my eye, and that was the light duty passenger vehicles made in Ontario fleet. There seems to be a lot of exclusions to it that I wondered if they impacted us in particular, in that we have fewer and fewer vehicles that are light duty. They're being manufactured in Ontario, and just wanted to know how much of an impact it actually would have with us to follow through. And the bid bonds was also a little confusing, in that I think at one point it talked that we wouldn't have to have bid bonds in place anymore, and then we went on to detail how much they needed to have, which was 2 million and 4 million, et cetera. And that, so I just wanted to get a little bit more clarification on that one.
So I can start on the light vehicles and turn it over to Treasurer Lemieux. With the light vehicles, it wouldn't impact our ambulances, which would be probably the biggest part of our fleet.
Okay.
What it would impact is the administrative vehicles. We have planning and economic development vehicles. We have the admin Prius. We have some light duty vehicles that the paramedics would use as well. So this doesn't impact ambulances. It would be, I'm trying to think of a number. It'd be a dozen.
Alex, you've got something to add?
8 to 12 would be my guess off the top of my head here, but far less than half our fleet.
Go ahead, Jerry.
So North Frontenac has already seen this, and it really impacts we mostly pickup trucks, And it really impacts them, doesn't impact the large, heavy vehicles. We have a couple small fleet cars like Escapes and so on will probably affect them. But like, you're not gonna be able to buy an F-150 unless you can justify it. We have a Chevy Silverado sitting right there. And that's going to be, depending on what happens over the next couple of months, that's liable to be taxed or cause issues as well. And we'll be buying Toyotas and whatever else and so on, because they're made in Ontario. And it's going to have an impact, and there'll be a slight increase in cost, maybe. And there will be, it just reduces the choice. So you can go the other way, but you have to and pick a vehicle or select a vehicle that's initially not allowed, but you can justify it, but they can verify, they will come and verify that. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens over the next year.
Any more discussion?
Just a clarification, if we're also looking at the policy per se, rather than just the bylaw at this point in time, is that part and parcel included? Okay, just wanted to clarify a couple things in that, because on page 8 of the 17 of the policy, and that near the bottom, when we're getting into the greater than 50,000, that for request for quotation, for that request for proposal, then you get to the request for tender for the 150,000. I'm right in thinking that the quotation and proposal are also automatically under the request for tender, and that for the 150,000, because they're greater than 50,000. If it's, or is that when it gets to the 150,000, there's only a request for tender, not a quotation or a proposal? I just wanted to get that straight in my head.
So at that point, it would really depend on the service that's being provided. So for a tender, you can clearly delineate what you need.
Mhm.
If you cannot, it would still be a request for proposal, even if it'd be over 150, because you don't have the requirements.
Okay, and then when we get to the 5.41, procurements greater than 10,000 but not exceeding 50,000 shall be eligible to be completed in the informal request for quotation. And that gave me a little bit of pause, and that cause it seems like almost up to 50,000 that it could be an informal request for quotation. And what is the procedure that's different for that?
Yeah, so the informal request for quotation would be a minimum of 3 documented quotes. It's not a formal, by formal, what's kind of meant is it's an open solicitation. Informal just means it's not open, but we do need to get our due diligence done as well, so we have to get at least 3 documented quotes there.
Okay, and on page 14 for the, excuse me, exemption to the procurement, and that in 2.1, legal is in there. And in 4.4, insurance, and I kind of thought that we should have a competition for those particular services. It's different from notary and medical and expert witness and that, but just legal services like we do have a solicitor on retention, and also insurance. I would have thought we'd have competition. Am I wrong in thinking that we aren't doing competitive bids on any of that?
So by this is that we don't have to. We have done competitive bids on insurance in the past. For legal, though, there is sometimes specialized legal advice we have. So we would have 3 lawyers or 3 law firms that we deal with depending on what the issue is. So legal is definitely nothing we've gone out competitively in recently, at least. Regarding insurance, I think in the case of like liability, we have done that as well. But in the case of, say, WSIB insurance, we have to pay that. There's a single vendor. So I think within that, we'll still do what we have to do to get the best price bill for the county. But I agree that insurance could be a bit of a gray area there.
Okay, and on page 16, 9.3C, for code of conflict and conflict of interest. Employees in council shall not purchase surplus assets outside of public auction. And I know just within the township, sometimes there's a quiet auction that's done for old fire equipment and things of that nature. I don't know that it's really a public auction. They're just listed for sale. Would this prevent employees from taking advantage of potentially used equipment that might be on a website for recirculating that stuff? Because it's not a public auction?
Not necessarily, because there's also a provision within single sourcing on page 13 where there's advantageous procurement case of liquidation, bankruptcy, or receivership.
Okay, because there's heavy, was it,
I'm sorry, before you leave that, I'm just gonna
you
ask
gotta
this-
turn your,
I want to ask this question. So if Frontenac Islands offers a used fire vehicle for sale, are you asking if this policy prevents a County of Frontenac employee from bidding on?
or the county of Frontenac. Or the county of Frontenac. In other words, if, say we had a grader that was for sale on the township, and suddenly the county thought that that would be a good thing to have for the trail, would this prevent it because it's not a public auction, it's just on a for sale site? Just a question.
So the code of conduct is specific for employees for personal use. Yes, employees and council members for personal use. So you can't just buy this chair
No, no,
outside of if we're auctioning the chair, then yes, you can, but you say, I can't walk up and say, I'm gonna give you $50 for
no,
the chair.
no, I'm thinking more like if you're the manager, so that's an employee of ours, and they have a spending limit that they can make purchases on, and they might see that there's a F-150 used for sale on somebody else's website, and they recognize it's within their budget of wanting to have one, and that they can go forward. And I just wondered, that particular line sort of caused me to stumble on that because it looks like it's a public auction rather than a website that they can purchase from. And I just want it clarified.
I just have a question regarding that. If an employee of the county or township wants to buy something, they can buy it through a public auction, something that's been offered to the public. They can go there and bid on it like anybody else. Should be nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, no, my thought was, for example, if we had used F-150, that might be something that could be suitable for the KMP trail. And Frontenac Islands listed it in part of this website for vehicles for sale. Could the manager of public works or the KMP trail economic development purchases, it's within their purchasing power without it going via public auction? It's just an ordinary used vehicle for sale. That's all I'm
Yeah,
curious.
It's a different entity, like if it's going to the KMP trail, you're talking about a group that's maintaining the trail, they'd have to go through the public auction as well, wouldn't you think?
I was just looking to clarify the question. So you're
Yeah.
talking about if the township, one of the townships had something surplus and the county was interested in,
And your county employee might be a manager or of economic development that says, oh, that's exactly what we're looking for. And we want to purchase it, but it's not at a public auction. It's a listed price for a used vehicle, which quite frankly could happen, and that could go easily the other way too, something that's used from the county and doesn't go to a public auction, just onto a website. Just asking.
and then I guess back to you, Alex, is this focused on county surplus items? Maybe that's the part I'm getting confused on between township and county.
Yeah, so the surplus assets are related specifically to this organization, not to other organizations. And within the policy, I'm trying to find the exact spot.
Like, I think your example maybe is outside of this, like, this is focused, we can only have policy around the county.
That's fine. It's just, it struck me an example of, at the township level, when our fire chief spied a used truck and it was within the spending limit that he could have. And it was on a site and that was a legitimate site and he's able to purchase it on behalf of the township and that's why I was just checking for that aspect.
Yeah, and I guess I could comment on the opposite. So I think when we have surplus here at the county, I think we do an offering out to the townships first before it ends up at public auction. So your example's kind of the other way.
Yeah, and I think the thought would be, it'd be then run through the single source procurement part of the policy where it is economically viable to do so.
Any more discussion? And a mover, Jerry, second. Judy, all in favor? Next item is 5.2, report 2026-075 corporate services approval of the county Frontenac policy, privacy policy.
Be it resolved that the Governance Review Committee approved the draft County of Frontenac privacy policy attached to this report as Appendix A, and further that the draft privacy policy be placed on the Governance Review Committee consultation project on Engage Frontenac for 21 days for public comment, and further that should no public comments be received, that the County Council approve the new County of Frontenac privacy policy attached to this report as Appendix A, and further that the clerk be delegated authority to update the appendices as necessary.
Any discussion? Jerry?
I'd like to thank Jeanette and whoever helped her for putting this together. This is a tremendous amount of work and it's really well done. So thank you.
Go ahead, Judy.
Just one question that for formatting and when we have the Appendix C and it is a separate set of appendices and I found at the back, introduction to the privacy breach protocol. Is there any way we could get it sort of closer to Appendix C?
So those appendices were put in there as part of the Word doc just to get them up on the agenda. I should say that the Director of Corporate Services, Alex Lemieux, has also had a lot of input onto this policy. And those appendices, he's actually created fillable forms, which are, I couldn't really upload onto the site the way they should be, but moving forward, they're fillable forms that have already been produced. It's the same information. It's just
when you go through it and that it has its own appendices A, B, C, and D. So maybe if we use Roman numerals or something instead of the same alphabet, because we have the alphabet at the start of it and just to sort it out a little bit.
for sure. So I could change them to Schedule A, Schedule B, Schedule C.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Jerry.
So when I went through this, this is a very serious document. So when I went through it, I was looking for shalls and wills. And I found a couple should and a couple ought. And I like the staff to go back through that and pick up a couple. Hang on. Just maybe, I've got a couple examples. So if you look at Appendix B, application, it's page 13 of 19. Says these procedures set out in the steps that county staff ought to follow in responding. It probably should be shall follow in responding. Okay, and then on page 50, I mean, there might be a few others, but these were just the first ones I did on the read through. Page 50, my page 50, okay. Some of the collection of personal information, like I want I have to give you my OHIP number in order to ask for certain information. I know we've got Fairmont Home sitting right here. But is this it says required, personal information involved, and it says required? That to me seems, if I was a staff, this is what I would have to do. And I'm the public and I want to know certain things, and I have an issue. Why am I giving you my personal SIN number? Why am I giving you my personal OHIP number and all that stuff? I just think we should take a second look at that. I think it's just too detailed.
Sorry, so the policy does note that, I'd have to quickly find it, but the policy does note that we shouldn't be collecting personal information if we don't need it. So for example, it notes that if you need to verify someone's identity, you just have to document that, yes, I saw their driver's license, but we're not photocopying it and we're not keeping it on file. We're just documenting that, yes, we reviewed their driver's license. I don't think the only time we would ever collect somebody's social insurance number is an employee, because we require that. We would never collect somebody's, like a resident's social insurance number, because we don't provide those types of services. We don't have social services on hand. So the amount of personal information that we would actually collect here at the county is very limited, because we don't have social services. We don't have recreational programs where we're collecting information on children, anything like that. So I'm just, was I clear?
Yeah, yes, you are, but the way the policy is written, this particular appendix, I'm wondering if we should have something in there, a line that says, as appropriate. Because like you're asking for theoretically biometric data, fingerprints, facial recognition. Somebody gets hold of this. I mean, you've got it right. You've covered all the possibilities. And now all of a sudden a staffer gets hold of this and says, oh my gosh, I had a breach, or I've done this. I need to do all this. And they read this without reading the other part. Or there should be some reference, personal information involved required as per section so-and-so of the policy. I just think we should do that. Not to say, because, and I know Fairmont Home makes a massive difference to our operation. If this is intended to work for Fairmont as well, I think it would. So, I mean, I just think we should put that corollary in.
So I'm just looking to clarify. So you're looking at Appendix D, which is the privacy impact assessment.
Yep.
Which that's new to us. So as we're looking at new systems that could include these things, I think this is our template to go through an assessment of what we might be collecting and determining if we need to collect it or not. So where it lists biometric data and all these things, we might not actually ever be collecting that. This would be our form to go through and determine that. And I see Alex has.
Yeah, just to add to that. So as Kevin was saying, it's basically our form when you get a new software or process, where we're checking off what we are collecting so that in the event of a privacy breach, we know what's there. It's when it says required doesn't mean we're collecting that on everyone. It just means for this software, say it's a payroll software, we have to collect social insurance numbers, that gets checked off. So in the event that there is a breach, we know what's out there.
And if I could just maybe add to that, some examples are, I don't know what type of things they have on the KMP trail. They have markers that are they taking photographs of people as they get onto the trail? So it's, again, as Alex noted, it's future use as well. And I would also note that the ministry itself is working on, and all the clerks are thanking them. They're working on a template for PIAs, because we're all like deer in the headlights with this. So this is one that we've been able to swipe from somebody else, so to speak, but they are working on a standardized template for all clerks to be able to use, which is why we had put in the recommendation that as these change, as we move forward with these, we could be updating this as well.
I have a question regarding freedom of information. If somebody applies for that information and they, how much is the county required, administration required to give out? And do they have to specify individual things that they're looking for, like name, address, date of birth? Or is that something that you can stop them from doing through the Freedom of Information or not, or do you have to comply?
So under MFIPA, we are not able to disclose personal information unless we have the individual's consent. So we wouldn't do that to start with. Unless there are some exemptions, like if there's a pending court case, but we wouldn't just hand out somebody's personal information. Anybody can put a request in under MFIPA, but MFIPA has heavy exemptions on it for personal information, so we wouldn't give that information out unless it's the individual.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Gary?
Last comment, I'm still not happy. I just think there should be a limiting sentence or something in there to say, just what I said earlier, that's just my final opinion. But, I know what you're intending, but you also wrote it. And you also are going to be the ones that most likely are going to have to apply it and interpret it, and will know what is required. But Joe Public doesn't. And someone can we've seen it recently, someone can take the extreme stand and just make life miserable for you. If you added a sentence that basically says collected as required by the situation, or something a little fancier than that. That's all I'm suggesting.
Go ahead.
Just for further clarification, you're focused probably on the personal information involved, and then in brackets it's required, and maybe we can like tighten that up or tweak that to like, it's not actually required. Like we're saying those items aren't all necessarily required. We're just using it as a checklist, but maybe we can be more clear as required or something to that effect.
Go ahead, Judy.
Okay, maybe you could have a flow chart or key that, for example, payroll will require your SIN number and your date of birth. And that freedom of information regarding council procedures will require your name, address, and that's, so we're not answering questions from somebody that doesn't live in the area, et cetera, and that something that just clarifies even to the public that they can say, oh, okay, so yeah, I understand why they'd actually be ticking off a health information because it might be related to employment and a WSIB claim, et cetera. But something to just either in a flow chart or a key index. So it's also newer staff and employees can see, okay, it is transparent. They aren't asking for this for my regular employment. And that it just clarifies things because it is very broad in what we would tick off, and that would just make it black and white for everybody that, okay, yeah, if they're going to be a resident at Fairmont, we're going to have their health information because that's required and their date of birth, but the other stuff isn't required in that. So that's my suggestion, just to make it more transparent for the public.
So if I could just add one last piece, this privacy impact assessment is when we are purchasing or procuring or starting a new project that is going to collect personal information. So this is this assessment where you're looking at where it says personal information required. So we check the box of what is required. So 9 times out of 10, the only thing required, we're going to check, yes, we need your name. If it's a planning application, yes, we need your address. Yes, we need your contact information. We don't need your date of birth, so we wouldn't check that off. We don't need your health information or medical records, so we wouldn't check that off. We may check that off if it's an employee, but we wouldn't check it out. So where it says required, you're just going to check off what this system that we're now purchasing is going to be collecting. If it's not collecting it, it doesn't get checked off. So in terms of the things down there, as Alex noted, it looks at future uses. So for example, I'm going to just give a silly example of Costco. When you go to Costco now, you have to put your card up to the camera and your face is there. So they are collecting facial recognition. Would we ever move to that? Would they move to that at Fairmont in the future? We don't know. So it's just going to check off what you actually collect. And 9 times out of 10, 50% of these boxes would not be checked off. And sorry, one other point as well is this doesn't include personal health information. So medical information, we collect medical information if an employee hands in a sick note. At Fairmount Home, that is considered personal health information and it falls under a different act.
One of the questions I have right here is, do we have to take this report, give it back to you and have it brought back at another time with the adjustments? Or is it okay to accept it today?
So the only adjustment I'm seeing here is to review the shalls and oughts to change them to shalls. That was the only adjustment I had heard so far. So we will adjust that, put it up on the Engage Frontenac site. If there are no comments on Engage Frontenac, we're looking to take this directly to council, not bring it back to the committee. But if it goes up on Engage Frontenac and we have several comments from the public or businesses or whoever, then we would bring it back to the committee.
Okay, thank you. That's what I want to know. Judy, go ahead.
Well, I still think that it'd be nice to have at least an example in that for the public to be aware that we aren't trying to collect all this information. I think that's probably going to be some of the comments if anybody looks at it. And as I said, just a key to me would be straightforward in that. If it's payroll, this is what we collect. If it's regular duties and that, this is what, or for paramedics, et cetera, and that's just my suggestion, but I'm not asking for an amendment of it.
So that's actually covered in Appendix A, which is notice of collection. So we do have to advise people when we are collecting information, we have a notice of collection on there. So for example, when we put out job postings, on every job posting, there is a notice of collection that states, this is the information we're collecting from you. This is the authority that allows us to do that. And this is how that information will be used. And we will not use it outside of that. So that is covered under the notice of collection. There are a couple of sample templates there, but again, they're encouraged to contact the clerk's office to ensure that they have proper information there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, motion on the resolution. Jerry? Seconded?
As amended or as discussed? No. Yeah,
Uh, As discussed. Second by Judy? Thank you. All in favor? Okay, pass. Okay. All right, we're down to the next meeting date. We need.
No.
Eh?
I don't believe there's no date for that.
No date for it.
So are we gonna lame duck?
No, we are not. So in order for us to be in lame duck, we would have to have 6 of the current council members not running for re-election. Right now, I believe that Councillor Smith is the only one who has not put her name in for re-election. So at this point, you're not in lame duck. The next lame duck piece would fall after the election. So after the election, if 6 are not re-elected, then you would be in lame duck. But there are no council meetings between the election and the new term of council. Yes, but the election is October 26th. Your October council meeting falls before the election and there is no meeting in November. November 25th would be the inaugural.
Theoretically, this goes on Engage Frontenac for 21 days. It's a couple days, whatever. So this could come to would it come to the September meeting? No, October meeting. Council could adopt it and then we're good to go. If not, we don't do anything until December or January.
If not, then we would hopefully have to get you to approve it in December because the new regulations take effect January 1. Sorry, and I should clarify that there is no rush for this. The new regulations require that we do a privacy impact assessment. We have a template that we have been doing with new procurement that we have been doing. So we are in compliance. So please don't feel that if you're not happy, that you have to rush this through by January 1.
So we as a committee don't have to meet till after the elections. Is that what you're saying?
Well, this committee would be dissolved, correct? It would be new appointments with the new term of council. So this committee will not be meeting before, unless, of course, there are comments on Engage Frontenac, at which point we would call a meeting for the first Tuesday in October.
Okay, thank you. So we'll just leave it that if we need the meeting, it'll be at the call of the chair. Okay, motion to our amendment or adjournment rather.
That the
Adjourn.
meeting hereby adjourn at 10:35 a.m.
Thank you very much.